You're getting me soaked." The rancher pulled her clothes and warmed her through the stormy night. She was on horseback, carrying a small pack of supplies meant for the ranch on the edge of the valley, a place she had never visited before. The wind whispered through the tall grass, bending the stalks in uneven waves, and a few drops of rain had already begun to fall, landing on her jacket and horse with tiny, cold splashes. Clara tightened the straps of her bag and pulled her coat closer around her shoulders, wishing she had checked the weather more carefully before leaving town. Her horse, a strong brown mare named Bella, moved cautiously along the narrow dirt trail. The path was slippery from the early rain, and every step required careful attention. Clara could feel the tension in Bella's muscles, the way her hooves sank slightly into the mud with each step. She reached down and patted Bella's neck. "It's okay, girl, just a little further. We'll be safe soon." The ranch wasn't far, only a few miles over the hills, but the storm was coming faster than Clara expected. The clouds rolled and shifted above her like dark waves on an ocean, and distant rumbles of thunder warned that the weather would not be kind. She kept moving forward, her boots sinking into the muddy trail, her eyes straining to see the path ahead. Every once in a while, a sharp flash of lightning illuminated the fields around her, making the landscape look strange and unfamiliar. For a moment, Clara could see the outline of a forest ahead, the trees bending slightly under the wind, their leaves rustling like whispers. She urged Bella onward, knowing that the ranch was likely the only place she could reach before the storm grew too dangerous. Her mind wandered for a moment, thinking about the stories she had heard of this region, how isolated it was, how the weather could turn suddenly, and how travelers often underestimated the wildness of the land. She had always loved adventure, but this was different. This was real. This was her being alone in the middle of the wilderness with a storm coming fast and a trail that grew slicker with every step. The first real raindrops began to fall in earnest, hitting her face and running down her coat. Clara tried to shield her eyes with her arm, but the rain was relentless. Bella shook her mane, sending droplets flying, and snorted softly, sensing Clara's unease. The wind picked up, carrying with it a chill that made Clara shiver even under her coat. She wished she could move faster, but the trail was too treacherous to risk rushing. One wrong step, and both she and Bella could slip and fall into the muddy slope beside them. In the distance, through the rain and mist, she could make out a faint glow, the lights of the ranch. It was small, almost hidden behind the rise of the hill, but it was a beacon of hope in the otherwise gray and threatening landscape. Clara felt a small wave of relief. She knew that if she could just reach that ranch, she would be safe from the storm, and both she and Bella would have shelter for the night. She adjusted her grip on the reins and urged Bella forward carefully, speaking to her softly to keep her calm. But the storm was relentless. The wind howled through the valley, tearing at Clara's coat and whipping her hair into her face. The rain became heavier, a constant sheet of cold water that soaked her completely in moments. Mud splashed up from Bella's hooves, coating her boots and the lower half of her coat. Her hands ached from gripping the reins, and she could feel the fatigue setting in. Every movement was a struggle, but she refused to turn back. She could not. Not now, not when safety was so close. As she climbed a small rise, the ground beneath Bella's hooves became slicker. Clara leaned forward instinctively, pressing against Bella's neck to keep her steady. A sudden slip made her heart leap. Bella slid slightly, her hooves skidding in the mud. Clara clutched the reins tightly, guiding her mare back to firmer ground. "Careful, Bella," she whispered. "Just a little more." The mare shook her head and snorted, as if agreeing, and continued along the trail with careful steps. The sound of thunder grew louder, vibrating through the air, and lightning split the sky in brilliant, frightening flashes. Clara flinched with each strike, feeling the energy of the storm pulse around her. For a moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake coming out here alone. But then she looked at Bella, steady and sure despite the treacherous trail, and felt a spark of courage. They could do this. They just had to keep moving. Clara noticed that the trail began to narrow as it wound between two hills. The mud was deeper here, and small streams of water trickled down the path, turning it into a thin, flowing river of brown. She forced Bella to slow down even further, careful not to let her lose her footing. Her own boots were soaked, her coat clinging to her skin, and her hair stuck to her face in wet strands. Yet despite the discomfort, she pushed forward, driven by determination and the faint hope of reaching the ranch. The light from the ranch grew slowly brighter, and Clara felt her spirits lift. She imagined the warmth of a fire, a dry place to rest, and the comfort of being out of the storm. But the path wasn't finished testing her yet. A fallen tree blocked part of the trail, and she had to navigate Bella around it, balancing on the slippery edges of the mud. Her heart pounded with each careful step, and her mind stayed focused entirely on the present moment. One slip could be disastrous, but Bella moved with remarkable steadiness, trusting Clara as much as she trusted the mare herself. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only a matter of minutes, Clara reached a point where the trail leveled out. The ranch lights were clearly visible now, shining through the downpour like a welcoming beacon. Relief flooded through her, and she allowed herself a small smile. She patted Bella's neck and whispered, "Almost there, girl, just a little further." Bella responded with a soft snort and quickened her pace just slightly, as if she too knew the danger was nearly behind them. By now, the rain was coming down in sheets, soaking Clara to the bone. Her gloves were wet and slippery, her coat completely drenched, and her hair hung in wet strands around her face. Every muscle ached from the effort, but she could feel the warmth of hope growing inside her. The storm was powerful, but she was determined. She would make it to the ranch tonight. As she crested the final hill before the ranch, the wind seemed to die down slightly, though the rain continued to fall heavily. There, standing in the open doorway of the ranch house, was a figure. Clara couldn't make out the details at first, but the figure waved, beckoning her closer. Her heart lifted even higher. Someone was there. She was not alone. Clara guided Bella carefully down the last stretch of trail, her eyes fixed on the figure in the doorway. Her legs were stiff, her body chilled to the bone, but she felt a surge of gratitude. They were almost safe. Almost. And in that moment, as the storm raged around them and the warm glow of the ranch promised shelter, Clara felt a mix of relief and anticipation. She didn't know who awaited her at the door, but she knew one thing. The long, dangerous journey through the storm was nearly over. She had made it this far, and now safety was within reach. Clara guided Bella carefully down the final stretch of the muddy trail, her heart pounding with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. The ranch lights ahead shone like a small island of safety in the vast gray of the stormy evening. The wind whipped around her, and rain plastered her hair to her face, but she kept moving forward, determined not to give in to the cold or the fear. Every step felt heavier than the last, yet the thought of a warm fire and shelter kept her moving. As they approached the ranch, a figure became clearer in the doorway. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward, holding a thick blanket in his hands. His hair was dark and damp from the rain, and his clothes looked practical and well-worn, perfect for someone used to living on a ranch and braving the elements. When he saw Clara struggling through the mud with her soaked horse, his expression shifted from casual interest to concern. Without a word, he waved her toward him, signaling that she had finally found help. Clara tried to speak to thank him, but the words were caught in her throat. The cold had taken her voice, and the wind stole her breath in short, sharp gusts. Bella hesitated slightly, sensing her rider's fatigue and the slick mud underfoot. Clara reached down and whispered softly, "It's okay, girl, just a little further." Bella snorted and moved forward cautiously, trusting Clara's guidance and the promise of safety ahead. The man stepped closer as they reached the porch, his boots sinking slightly into the wet wooden boards. He extended his hand toward Clara, steady and reassuring. "Come on inside," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You're going to get sick standing out there any longer." Clara hesitated for a moment, a mix of embarrassment and relief washing over her. She had always prided herself on independence and self-reliance, but tonight she had no choice. The storm had made her vulnerable, and she had to accept help. With careful movements, she dismounted Bella, her legs trembling from the effort and the cold. The man helped steady her, and she allowed him to guide her inside the ranch. The warmth hit her immediately, a gentle wave that contrasted sharply with the icy rain outside. The smell of wood smoke and the faint aroma of cooking filled the room, making her realize just how hungry and tired she was. She shivered as the door closed behind them, cutting off the worst of the wind and rain, but she felt a strange comfort in knowing she was no longer alone. The ranch interior was simple but inviting. Wooden beams lined the ceiling, and a fire burned steadily in the stone fireplace, sending a soft glow across the room. A thick rug covered the floor near the hearth, and a few chairs and a small table were arranged in a cozy manner. Clara's eyes wandered, taking in the details as she tried to shake off the tension from the storm. The man's presence was quiet but commanding. He moved with purpose and ease, clearly accustomed to handling difficult situations without fuss. "Here, take this," he said, handing her the blanket he had carried from the porch. It was thick and warm, and Clara immediately wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth seeped into her bones, and she sighed with relief. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, her voice still soft from the cold. The man gave her a small, understanding smile but didn't press her for conversation. Instead, he motioned toward the table where a steaming mug of tea waited. "Drink this. You'll feel better." Clara accepted the tea with trembling hands, feeling the warmth spread through her chest as she took a cautious sip. The sweet, strong flavor was comforting, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to relax slightly. She glanced around the room, noticing small details that gave her a sense of the man's life here: photographs of cattle, a few tools neatly arranged along the wall, and a hat hanging by the door. Everything spoke of hard work, dedication, and a life lived close to the land. The man, whose name she learned was Tom, moved to the fireplace, adjusting the logs to keep the flames steady. "That storm came on faster than I expected," he said, more to himself than to her. "It's a good thing I saw you out there." "Could have been dangerous." Clara nodded, grateful but still a little embarrassed. She hated feeling so helpless, but she couldn't deny the relief she felt in his presence. "You're lucky you had Bella with you," Tom continued, glancing at the mare now safely tied outside on the covered porch. "She's a strong horse, and she knows her way around mud and hills." Not every horse would have managed that trail tonight. Clara smiled faintly, patting the blanket around her shoulders. "I think we were both lucky," she admitted. "I didn't expect the storm to be this bad." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, listening to the rain hammering against the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder. The warmth of the fire, the safety of the ranch, and the calm presence of Tom began to soothe the tension that had gripped Clara all afternoon. She sipped her tea slowly, feeling her energy returning, and allowed herself to notice the subtle kindness in Tom's demeanor. He had helped her without question, without judgment, simply because it was the right thing to do. After a while, Clara realized she needed to dry her wet clothes. Tom noticed her movement and stood. "I've got some spare clothes you can change into," he said. He led her to a small room at the back of the ranch, simple but clean, with a warm bed and folded blankets. The gesture, simple as it was, made Clara feel seen and cared for in a way that surprised her. She changed quickly, grateful for the dry clothes, and returned to the kitchen area, feeling more like herself again. As she settled back into her chair by the fire, the storm outside showed no sign of slowing. Rain battered the windows and the wind howled through the gaps in the wooden walls. Clara felt a flicker of unease, but Tom's calm presence reassured her. He moved around the room, tending to the fire, checking the windows, and occasionally glancing at her with a small smile. There was a sense of quiet protectiveness about him that made Clara feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. "You should probably keep that blanket around you for a while," Tom said, nodding toward the one she had wrapped around her shoulders. "It'll take a while for your body to warm up completely after being out in that rain." Clara nodded, adjusting the blanket, feeling the soft fabric against her skin. She looked at him and felt a strange sense of connection, a trust that had formed in a matter of minutes but felt surprisingly strong. As the evening wore on, the storm outside grew more intense, but the ranch remained a haven. Clara and Tom began talking in small, careful conversation, sharing stories about their lives and experiences. Tom spoke of the ranch, the hard work, the isolation, and the satisfaction of living close to nature. Clara shared stories of her travels, the challenges she had faced, and her love of adventure. The conversation flowed easily, a natural comfort settling between them despite the storm's fury outside. At one point, Clara shivered again, and Tom noticed immediately. Without thinking, he reached out and pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You're getting me soaked," he said with a teasing grin, a small spark of humor cutting through the tension of the storm. Clara laughed softly, the sound mingling with the crackle of the fire. It was the first real smile she had allowed herself in hours, and it made her heart feel lighter despite the chaos of the weather outside. The night stretched on, and the storm continued its relentless pounding. But inside the ranch, Clara felt a sense of safety, warmth, and even companionship she hadn't expected to find. Tom's presence was steady and reassuring, and she realized that this chance encounter in the storm had led to something unexpected. A connection built on trust, care, and the shared experience of surviving a night in the wilderness together. By the time she finally allowed herself to relax completely, the fire had burned low, and the sound of rain against the roof was almost soothing. Clara felt a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. She had been cold, wet, and scared, but now she was safe. And more than that, she had met someone who had shown her kindness without hesitation, someone who had transformed a frightening situation into a moment of connection and warmth. As she sipped the last of her tea, Clara realized that the storm, which had seemed so threatening, had also brought her to a place she would not soon forget. The ranch, the fire, the comfort of dry clothes, and the quiet strength of the man who had helped her, all of it combined to create a memory that would stay with her for years. She knew the storm would pass eventually, but the warmth and trust she felt tonight would remain long after the clouds had cleared. Clara sat by the fire, the blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, feeling the warmth slowly seep into her chilled bones. The storm outside was relentless, rain lashing against the windows and wind shaking the wooden walls of the ranch. But inside, the fire flickered softly, casting shadows that danced across the room, and for the first time since she had left town, Clara felt a sense of calm. She sipped her tea slowly, savoring the warmth that spread through her chest and arms, and listened to the comforting crackle of the fire. Tom moved around the room with quiet purpose, tending to the fireplace and making sure the hearth stayed strong against the gusts that rattled the windows. His calm presence was steadying, a stark contrast to the chaos of the storm outside. Clara watched him for a moment, noticing the way he moved with ease and confidence, the way his hands worked naturally as he adjusted the logs and checked the fire. There was something reassuring about him, the kind of calm that made someone feel safe even when the world around them seemed dangerous. "You must be frozen," Tom said, glancing over his shoulder with a small smile. "That storm came out of nowhere. I've been here for years, and I've never seen it come down this hard this early in the evening." Clara nodded, wrapping the blanket a little tighter around herself. "I didn't expect it to be this bad," she admitted. "I thought I'd make it to the ranch before it started, but the storm came so fast." Tom's expression softened. "It's all right. You made it, and that's what matters. Better late than never, right?" Clara couldn't help but smile at his words. Despite the embarrassment of being caught in the storm, she felt a strange sense of pride in having made it this far. She had been cold, wet, and exhausted, but she had survived, and now she was safe. For a while they sat in companionable silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the rhythmic pounding of rain on the roof. Clara could feel the tension in her shoulders beginning to ease, and she took a deep breath, letting herself relax. She glanced at Tom, noticing the way his eyes followed her movements with a calm attentiveness, as if he were quietly making sure she was comfortable and safe. There was no pressure, no rush, just a gentle, steady presence that made her feel at ease. After a few moments, she set her cup down and looked around the kitchen area. "This place is really cozy," she said softly. "It feels safe, even with the storm raging outside." Tom chuckled lightly. "It's not much, but it's home. You get used to it. The fire, the walls, the roof over your head, it's simple, but it works." He paused, glancing at her with a small smile. "And tonight it's doing its job. You're safe, dry, and warm. That's what matters." Clara felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. There was something comforting in Tom's words, in his tone, in the quiet way he looked out for her without making her feel weak or incapable. She realized that, for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the need to hide her vulnerability. The storm outside had stripped away pretenses, leaving only the reality of being human, tired, wet, and needing help sometimes. As she wrapped the blanket more securely around herself, Tom approached the fire and added another log, the flames jumping higher and casting a golden glow across the room. "You'll need to keep moving to stay warm," he said gently, noticing her shiver. Clara shook her head. "I think this blanket is enough for now," she said, smiling faintly. Tom smiled back, a teasing sparkle in his eyes. "Well, it's a big blanket. I might have to share it with you if it gets any colder." Clara laughed softly, the sound mingling with the crackle of the fire. It was a small, human moment, but it broke the tension and made the room feel even cozier. The storm outside continued, but inside, time seemed to slow. They talked quietly, sharing stories to pass the time and keep their minds off the relentless rain. Clara told Tom about her travels, the places she had visited, and the small adventures she had experienced along the way. She spoke with excitement, her words flowing easily, and for the first time in hours, she felt completely at ease. Tom listened attentively, asking gentle questions and occasionally sharing a laugh at her stories. Tom, in turn, shared stories about life on the ranch. The early mornings, the long days, the challenges of living so far from the nearest town, and the satisfaction of a hard day's work. Clara listened with interest, fascinated by the way he described the land, the animals, and the simple but fulfilling rhythm of ranch life. There was a quiet pride in his words, a sense of belonging to something larger than himself, and Clara found herself drawn to it. At one point, Clara shivered again, and Tom immediately noticed. Without hesitation, he stepped closer and gently pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You're getting me soaked," he said playfully, half teasing, half concerned. Clara laughed softly, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. The teasing remark broke the ice completely, and she realized how comfortable she felt around him, how easy it was to let down her guard and simply be herself. They spent the next few hours in this quiet routine, the storm outside serving as a backdrop to a growing sense of connection inside. They moved around the kitchen, tidying up and adjusting the fire, talking in low, easy tones. The simplicity of the tasks, combined with the comfort of each other's company, created a peaceful rhythm that made the night feel surprisingly gentle despite the fury of the storm outside. Clara noticed small details about Tom that made her feel even more at ease. The way he moved naturally around the space, the calm attentiveness in his eyes, and the quiet kindness in his actions. There was no rush, no expectation, only a shared presence in a stormy world, a mutual understanding that they were both safe for now, and that was enough. As the night deepened, Clara began to feel the fatigue from her journey and the storm catch up to her. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she found herself leaning slightly against the chair, the warmth of the blanket and the fire making her drowsy. Tom noticed and offered a gentle suggestion. "You should rest. There's a spare room at the back. You can dry off, warm up, and get some sleep." Clara nodded, grateful for the offer. She felt comfortable enough to accept, trusting him completely in this unfamiliar place. She followed him to a small bedroom at the back of the ranch, simple but inviting. A thick quilt lay folded neatly on the bed, and the room smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. Clara changed into dry clothes, feeling the relief of warmth and comfort wash over her. She returned to the living area, feeling lighter and more human than she had in hours. Tom had stoked the fire again, the flames dancing and casting a soft glow across the room. Sitting by the fire once more, Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had been cold, wet, and scared, but now she was safe, warm, and cared for. The storm outside was fierce, but inside she had discovered something unexpected, a connection with another human being, built on kindness, trust, and the simple act of being there for each other. As the night wore on, they talked less and simply enjoyed each other's company. The fire crackled, the rain fell, and the world outside seemed to fade away. In that small ranch kitchen with the storm raging beyond the walls, Clara realized that this night, so frightening at first, had become a moment of comfort, human connection, and quiet intimacy. She felt a deep sense of calm, knowing that, at least for now, she was safe, warm, and not alone. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up. Rain pounded against the roof of the ranch, and the wind shook the wooden walls as if trying to force its way inside. But inside, the kitchen was warm and calm. The fire crackled in the hearth, sending flickers of golden light across the room, and the scent of wood smoke mixed with the faint aroma of herbs from a small pot on the stove. Clara, now completely dry and wrapped in a soft blanket, felt the tension of the storm slowly ease. The warmth, the light, and Tom's steady presence made the harsh weather outside almost feel distant, as if they were in their own small, protected world. Tom moved around the room with ease, stacking more firewood and checking the windows to ensure none of the storm's fury could get inside. Clara watched him for a moment, noticing the careful way he worked, his movements deliberate but effortless. It was clear that he was used to living in a place where weather could be unpredictable and unforgiving. She felt a new sense of admiration for him, not just for his strength and skill, but for the calm assurance he carried. It was comforting to know someone so capable was nearby. "You look more comfortable now," Tom said, glancing at her with a faint smile. "The fire is steady, the blanket is warm, and you've had some tea. You should feel like yourself again soon." Clara nodded, smiling softly. "I already do," she said. "It's amazing how fast a warm fire and dry clothes can make a difference." She took another sip of tea, feeling the heat move through her, filling not just her body but her spirit as well. The storm outside roared, but inside, time seemed to slow. The firelight created a cozy, almost magical atmosphere, and Clara felt a sense of calm that was rare for her, especially after a long day of travel and the sudden storm. She glanced at Tom and realized just how much his presence contributed to that feeling. There was no need for conversation, no need for explanation. Simply being there with someone who cared and understood was enough. After a moment, Tom moved closer, carrying a small tray with 2 more mugs of tea. He set one down in front of Clara and took the other for himself. "It's not much," he said quietly, "but it's hot and strong just the way it should be." Clara smiled and accepted the mug, feeling the warmth spread through her fingers as she held it. The simple gesture of bringing tea, of making sure she was comfortable, spoke volumes about his character. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it was genuine and thoughtful. They sat together in a quiet rhythm, sipping their tea and listening to the storm's relentless pounding. Clara felt her eyes wander around the room, taking in the small details. The simple wooden chairs, the well-worn table, the photographs of cattle and ranch life on the walls. Each detail painted a picture of a life built on hard work, patience, and care. She imagined the days that Tom must have spent here, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and maintaining the ranch through all kinds of weather. It was a life that demanded resilience, and she realized she was beginning to understand the kind of strength it required. At one point, Clara shivered again, and Tom immediately noticed. Without hesitation, he pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You're getting me soaked," he said teasingly but with genuine concern in his eyes. Clara laughed softly, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. The gentle humor in his voice, combined with the protective way he had acted, made her feel safe and cared for. She realized that the night, which had started with fear and uncertainty, had become a time of trust and connection. As the hours passed, they shared more stories. Tom spoke of the challenges he had faced running the ranch alone at times, the joy he felt in seeing animals thrive, and the satisfaction of accomplishing something with his own hands. Clara shared more about her own experiences, the places she had traveled, and the moments that had tested her courage. Their conversation flowed naturally, without the awkwardness that often accompanies new acquaintances. It was as if the storm had created a bubble around them, isolating them from the rest of the world and allowing a genuine connection to form. At one point, Clara noticed the flicker of lightning outside, followed by a deep rumble of thunder. Despite the storm's intensity, she felt no fear. Tom's presence was grounding, and she realized that she could face anything when she wasn't alone. He noticed her glance and offered a reassuring smile. "It's just a storm," he said softly. "We're safe here. Nothing to worry about." His words carried weight because they weren't just empty reassurances. They were rooted in experience and competence. Clara felt a sense of trust growing within her, a feeling that perhaps this night would be remembered not for the storm, but for the safety and kindness she had found. The night stretched on, and as fatigue began to settle in, Tom suggested that they prepare for rest. "The storm will be here for a while longer," he said, "but we can keep the fire going and you should rest. There's a spare room at the back." Clara nodded, grateful for the suggestion. She followed him quietly, taking in the familiar warmth of the house and feeling a deep sense of comfort. The bedroom was simple but inviting, with a thick quilt and blankets neatly folded. The smell of wood smoke and the faint scent of lavender made it feel cozy and safe. Clara changed into comfortable clothes and returned to the living area, feeling lighter and more at ease. Tom had tended the fire again, ensuring it would burn through the night. They sat together, not talking much, just enjoying the warmth and the quiet companionship. The storm outside seemed distant now, a background to the simple, steady presence of someone who cared. As the night grew deeper, Clara began to reflect on the day's events. She had faced fear and uncertainty, battled exhaustion and cold, and yet she had found something unexpectedly wonderful. The storm, which had seemed so threatening, had led her to safety, warmth, and trust. She realized that sometimes the most intense and challenging experiences could also bring the most meaningful connections. At one point, Tom looked at her with a soft smile. "You've been through a lot tonight," he said gently. "I'm glad you're safe here," Clara smiled back, feeling a warmth in her chest. "I am," she admitted, "thanks to you." There was no need for further words. The simple exchange conveyed trust, gratitude, and the growing bond between them. They continued to sit by the fire, talking occasionally but mostly enjoying the quiet companionship. The storm outside raged on, but inside the ranch, time seemed to slow. The firelight flickered on their faces, creating a sense of intimacy and safety. Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time, a feeling that perhaps the night, with all its challenges, had brought something truly special into her life. As the hours passed, fatigue finally took its hold, and Clara realized it was time to rest fully. Tom offered her the blanket once more and gestured toward a comfortable chair near the fire. "Get some sleep," he said softly. "I'll keep the fire going and you'll be warm." Clara nodded, settling into the chair and wrapping the blanket around herself. The warmth of the fire, combined with the quiet presence of Tom nearby, made her feel secure enough to drift into a deep, restful sleep. Even as she slept, Clara felt the lingering sense of connection from the evening. The storm outside, which had once seemed overwhelming, was now just a distant roar, while inside she had found something lasting: trust, kindness, and the comforting knowledge that someone cared. The night would eventually end. The storm would pass, but the memory of this night of warmth, safety, and human connection would stay with her for a long time. By morning, the storm had finally passed. The sky was a soft gray, with the first hints of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Rain still glistened on the grass and trees, but the harsh winds had quieted, leaving the valley calm and peaceful. Clara woke slowly, stretching her stiff muscles and feeling the lingering warmth of the blanket that had kept her cozy through the night. She could hear the soft sounds of the ranch, birds calling to one another, the faint lowing of cattle in the distance, and the gentle creak of the wooden beams as the house settled in the quiet morning. The fire in the hearth had burned low overnight, leaving behind a gentle warmth in the kitchen. Clara dressed in dry clothes, feeling refreshed and more human than she had the night before. Her body still carried the memory of the storm, the fatigue, the chill, and the tension, but those feelings were replaced now with gratitude and a surprising sense of peace. The ranch, the fire, and the quiet presence of Tom had left a mark on her, a memory of safety and kindness she knew she would carry with her. She walked quietly into the kitchen, where Tom was already busy preparing a simple breakfast. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the room, mingling with the lingering scent of wood smoke. Clara felt a smile spread across her face. The storm might have been harsh, but it had led her to this warm, welcoming place, and she couldn't help but feel thankful for it. "Good morning," Tom said, glancing up with a small smile as she entered. "Sleep well," Clara nodded, her voice soft but steady. "Yes. Thank you again for last night. I don't know what I would have done without your help." Tom waved off her thanks lightly, though his expression held a quiet warmth. "You did fine. You made it here safely, and that's what matters. It wasn't just me, you handled yourself well too." Clara felt a rush of gratitude. The combination of humility and reassurance in his words made her feel seen and respected, not just helped. They sat down to breakfast together, talking quietly as they ate. The night's storm was already becoming a distant memory, though the images of heavy rain, whipping wind, and mud-stained trails were still vivid in Clara's mind. She described her journey to Tom, sharing the challenges of the muddy paths, the slipping and sliding, and the moments when she had feared they wouldn't make it. Tom listened carefully, nodding and occasionally smiling at the small details that revealed her courage and determination. "You're braver than you realize," Tom said finally, pouring himself another cup of coffee. "It's not easy being out in that kind of weather alone. Most people would have turned back long before you did." Clara blushed faintly, feeling a warmth beyond the fire. "I didn't have much choice," she admitted, "but I'm glad I kept going. I wouldn't have met you otherwise." Tom's smile softened, and he didn't respond immediately, letting the words hang between them. There was a quiet understanding, an acknowledgement of the connection that had formed the night before, unspoken but clear. After breakfast, Clara prepared to continue her journey. She packed her supplies carefully, making sure Bella was fed and ready for the road. The mare stood patiently, sensing the calm of the morning, her coat shiny from the rain and her hooves firm on the soft, wet ground. Clara patted Bella's neck, whispering softly, "Ready to go, girl," Bella snorted, a small, affectionate sound that made Clara laugh quietly. Tom stepped out with her, helping guide Bella to the trailhead. The morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of rain-soaked grass and earth. Clara took a deep breath, feeling renewed and grateful. She had faced the storm, survived the night, and now stood ready to continue her journey. But as she looked at the ranch, she felt a tug of reluctance. The connection she had formed with Tom was stronger than she expected, and the thought of leaving this small, safe world behind made her chest tighten slightly. "I'll miss this place," she admitted softly, glancing at the ranch house bathed in the gentle morning light. Tom nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It's special, isn't it? There's something about a place like this, it stays with you." Clara smiled faintly, appreciating his words. "It's more than just the place," she said. "It's you, the way you made me feel safe last night." "I'll remember that." Tom's expression softened further, and for a moment they simply looked at each other in quiet acknowledgement. Clara climbed onto Bella, the familiar motion grounding her in the present. She adjusted her pack and reins, feeling the weight of her journey but also a renewed sense of confidence. She turned to Tom one last time before heading down the trail. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice carrying the sincerity of her gratitude. "I won't forget this night." Tom nodded, his hands resting lightly on the railing of the porch. "Take care of yourself out there, and come back anytime. The ranch will always have a light on for you." Clara felt a warm surge in her chest. There was a bond between them now, built on trust, care, and shared experience. She knew that no matter where her journey took her this night, the storm, the fire, the warmth, and Tom's kindness would stay with her. She nudged Bella gently forward, and the mare moved steadily along the muddy trail, carrying Clara toward the next part of her journey. As she rode, Clara reflected on the night and the morning. The storm had seemed overwhelming, but it had brought her something unexpected: safety, connection, and a reminder of the kindness that could exist even in the most challenging circumstances. She realized that courage wasn't just about facing dangers alone. It was also about accepting help when it was offered, trusting another person, and finding strength in connection. The trail stretched ahead, winding through the valley and leading toward the distant hills. The sun began to peek out from behind the clouds, casting a soft glow on the wet grass and the glistening leaves. Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose, a sense that she could face whatever lay ahead with courage and hope. She glanced back at the ranch one last time, taking in the familiar warmth of the building, the light from the windows, and the figure of Tom standing there. A smile touched her lips. Clara realized that this night would remain in her memory as more than just a stormy evening. It was a night of trust, of unexpected kindness, and of human connection that had brought her through fear and discomfort to safety and warmth. She felt grateful for the experience, for the people and places that had helped her, and for the reminder that even in the most challenging situations, there was always the possibility of finding light. As the trail stretched forward, Clara felt her spirit lifted. The storm had passed and a new day had begun. The valley was calm, the air crisp and clear, and the path ahead seemed full of possibility. She adjusted the reins and encouraged Bella onward, feeling the mare respond with steady confidence. Each step carried her farther from the storm, but closer to a new understanding of courage, trust, and human kindness. Clara knew that she would carry this night with her for years: the fear, the relief, the warmth, and the bond she had formed with Tom. It was a reminder that even in difficult moments, there was hope, and even in the harshest storms, there were moments of safety and connection that could change a life forever. By the time she reached the top of the first hill beyond the ranch, the sun had broken through completely, casting golden light across the wet valley. The rain had left the air fresh and clean, the scent of earth and grass mingling in the breeze. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the sense of peace in her heart. She had survived the storm, found safety, and experienced something extraordinary, a night that had tested her courage and rewarded her with trust, warmth, and human connection. As she rode on, Clara glanced back one last time at the ranch. The house stood firm and welcoming, a symbol of the kindness and care that had carried her through the storm. Tom's figure remained visible in the doorway, a quiet presence that reassured her even from a distance. She smiled, a mix of gratitude and hope filling her heart, and urged Bella forward with renewed energy. The journey ahead was still long, the trail winding through hills and valleys, but Clara felt ready. She carried with her the memory of the stormy night, the warmth of the fire, and the trust she had found in another person. The world was vast and unpredictable, but she had discovered a small haven in the middle of the storm, a place of safety, connection, and hope. And as she rode toward the next chapter of her journey, she knew she would never forget it.